Welcome to the Siren Songbook, a podcast where we discuss female artists, their music, their history, and the impact they've made on the music industry. Join us each month as we pick a new inspirational artist and celebrate exactly what it is that makes them so magical. Welcome, everyone, to episode 15 of the Siren Songbook. I'm Amy.
I'm Kasey.
And today we are talking Amythyst Kiah.
Mm-hmm.
This one was brought in by Kasey. I didn't know much about her, but we were trying to find someone newer and who would be good for Pride Month.
Yes.
Because we wanted to celebrate queer artists during Pride Month.
Yeah.
And woo woo. So Kasey brought this one forward, so I'm going to let Kasey take it away.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about her.
Well, I was first turned on to Amythyst Kiah a couple of years ago because one of our mutual music friends, Reverend Red, had messaged me like a couple of years ago and was like, "Hey, I found this artist and I just think that you'd really like her." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I went to check her out and I was like, "Oh, actually, yeah, I do. Thanks so much." And I think this was like shortly after her. I think this was shortly after Wary and Strange came out, so I got to listen to that album and I really liked it. But to give a little bit of backstory on Amythyst Kiah, she's born in 1986, is an American singer-songwriter, is a native of the Chattanooga area of Tennessee and currently lives in Johnson City, which often you'll hear as like what's the right word? It's something that is brought up quite often in her songwriting that I've noticed in listening to her albums that are available on streaming services. I know that there are 4 listed, but 3 are available through Spotify, if that's where you get your music from, or Apple Music, where she mentions Johnson City a couple of times. And also through some of the interviews that we were watching, she brings up how important Johnson City is to her. It's not that far away from Dollywood, if you guys are fans of Dollywood. Oh. She can play guitar and banjo. And as of 2022, she's released 2 solo albums, but now we're in 2025. So she's released 3 with 1 EP. And she's also appeared along with Rhiannon Giddens, Layla McCalla, and Allison Russell on the album Songs of Our Native Daughters in 2019. And they are recently touring again. And Kiah has earned a 2020 Grammy Award for Best American Root Song, nominated for her song Black Myself, which was on the album Wary and Strong. Her father, who is also her tour manager...
Wary and...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Strange, right?
Did I say that or what did I say?
You said Wary and Strong.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've been doing that so much lately where like I, in my brain, said the thing and then my mouth said something so different.
Said something completely different.
Oh,
it's fine. It's the heat. It's the heat, girl.
We don't get June gloom. We get June punishment here in California. Yeah. Her father, who's also her tour manager, sang and played percussion in a band in the 1970s, and her mother sang in the church growing up. She attended a creative arts high school and taught herself to play guitar, and then when she was 17, her mother died by suicide, which is a huge part of her songwriting process, and this is like something she works through quite a bit within her writing. And she was singing at her funeral was Kiah's 3rd public performance ever.
Oh, wow.
So it was, obviously, a huge, huge impact on her life. She's a graduate of East Tennessee State University, where she completed the Bluegrass, Old Time, and Country Music Studies program and joined the school's marquee old time band. And she's been touring since 2010, either solo or with a band she called her Chest of Glass, or with her fellow Our Native Daughters. 2013 onward, she released her first album, Dig, and her style this time was considered Southern Gothic. She released her first album, in 2013. I'm trying to think of the actual time period. I don't think it's listed the exact date. But the album...
No, I just have 2013 down.
Yeah. The album was produced by Kiah and recorded at East Tennessee State University Recording Lab. What I love about this album is that it is very stripped back. I mean, it's almost completely just like... her voice and the guitar, and there's like a little bit of percussive instrument here and there. Like there's like a shaker or like a stomp here and there. It's very like...
It's just strictly like acoustic country folk Americana music.
Yes. Yeah.
Like it reminds me a lot of... I had written down that like it reminds me of writing songs with my friends. Like, it just gives me that vibe of sitting in a jam session with your friends, writing songs together with just a guitar, or like how, I mean, Siren Valley literally is just acoustic guitar and percussion. So it very much gave me that vibe of like, I wanted to hear this in a coffee shop or a songwriter's round type vibe.
Yeah.
And it just felt like really pure and like gave me that vibe that I love of sitting around with your friends writing music.
Yes.
I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah, 100%. I believe she's the main songwriter for most of the songs. I don't know for every single one. I didn't sit there and like check everything and I was like, did you write every song? But I would say that my favorite song on this album on Dig is Over Yonder in the Graveyard. Which I think is such a great, yeah, I feel like this is such a great, and I don't want to project onto Amythyst in any capacity, but I feel like this is such a beautiful, like, queer love song / like really sad love song, you know, talking about, you know, over yonder in the graveyard where the wild flowers grow, oh, there she lay, my own true lover, she's gone from me forevermore, fairer than the sweetest flowers, restless as the wildest wind, born with a love deep as the ocean, that was the girl that I did win. You know, a beautiful.
Yeah. It's so, like, that one just kind of took my breath away. And I loved it's a sad song about, like, her lover passing away, but the beauty of writing about this woman she loved and that loved her back, and like so proudly being queer and not being afraid to write about being in love with a woman. It was all just beautiful to me.
There's some great lyrics in this one. I mean, I think what's really funny about like Southern Gothic music, and like our friend that I mentioned earlier that introduced me to her, it kind of makes Southern Gothic style music. I mean, I think that he would consider himself more murder folk is what he would call himself. But our friends are in that kind of scene, and there, you know, there's a lot of the lyricism, and I know this isn't like based in reality. So a lot of the lyricism in a lot of these songs are, you know, about like a loved one dying, because that would, you know, like I feel like it feels like an ode to like maybe like the 1800s where it was, you know, tuberculosis was unfortunately really prevalent at the time. So a lot of people died. Yeah. A lot of young people died very before their time, and, you know, so people would lose their significant others, and to like hear it from a perspective of queerness, I think is really refreshing, because, you know, in the Southern folk or the Southern Gothic scene, like, yeah, I hear songs that are similar to this from other artists where they're very, you know, at least on the surface, it's a straight song. And so for this to come out in 2013, which, you know, I know 2013 was, you know, especially when this album came out, was a time in the United States where there was so much conversation about the legality of gay marriage. I know here in California, you know, we were dealing with Proposition 8, and then the repeal of Proposition 8, and then the passing of gay marriage once again. And this was around the same time that there was ruling of, you know, same-sex marriage. I know that Obergefell, I think, was finally ruled on 10 years ago. So in 2015. Yeah. So it wasn't fully legally recognized throughout the entirety of the United States. And she grew up in Appalachia, so I'm sure that things were a lot different. Here, us growing up in California, like, I've been around, you know, like, from us, it was like no brainer in the early 2000s. Like, yeah, like, everybody should be allowed to marry whoever they want. Like, we were around that, and we were in such an accepting place, like growing up in Southern California specifically. So to, you know, I don't know if she was I'm not wanting to project in a way that she's trying to make a statement in some capacity, but understanding kind of the road of Amythyst music and kind of like where she ends up, where with her next album that comes out in 2021, it would be safe to maybe assume that she's making somewhat of a political statement here by making music that is unashamed to use very specific pronouns, you know, especially at this specific time period of 2013. I was, you know, still in high school at the time, but I remember 2013, and I remember we've talked about this many times about, you know, growing up in the church and dealing with our own sexualities and stuff. And 2013 was a very interesting time period for me, like having to draw lines in the sand with my own family members and stuff, and being more comfortable feeling like I could come out and different things like that. So
yeah, that was around the time that I was like coming out of the like you said, like you're starting to realize like what you grew up with in the church and what you heard was maybe not what you believe anymore, as far as like, especially that, like I remember asking the questions of like, why do we think it's wrong? If it's wrong, then, and God made us all the way we are, then why do they love these people? You know?
Yeah.
You know, like you said, there was a large amount of discussion around this. So like, not saying that it was a political statement, but it was a very beautiful and brave thing to come out and write a song from this perspective and put it on an album and put it out there.
Yeah.
I feel like
100%. And I know that she spent a lot of time with our native daughters, and I don't want to dwell too much on that part of her, because I know that we'll probably cover our native daughters and Rhiannon Giddens and Allison Russell at some point moving forward. So I kind of want to put that section of where she's at on the shelf a little bit and kind of just focus on Amythyst music specifically. But in 2021, which is a significant amount of time later, she comes out with her next album, and I wanted to turn to a specific article from Country Queer, written by Rachel Kolst. That was also part of an interview that was done in a podcast through Country Queer Spotlight, because I think some of the things that they talk about was really important. For the album Wary and Strange, not Strong, let me not say that the second time. This was the album that introduced me to Amythyst Kiah, and I think it's such a great album. The album starts off with a song called Soapbox, and I just wanted to read some of the lyrics because I just think that they're so great. It comes out, like, just to paint the picture, I mean, we all know how the 2020s have gone so far. We've been living in it 5 years in, and I'm tired. But in 2020, there was a lot of like social unrest, as well as, you know, the pandemic going on, and a lot of people coming to terms with a lot of different things, a lot of people needing to reevaluate a lot of different things, specifically white people needing to reevaluate their place in their, what's the right word? I'm trying to think. I want to be able to say this correctly, you know. I guess a lot of white people needing to reevaluate their privilege and just like coming to terms with a lot of different stuff. I know that like, so if I wasn't so tired, I probably have a much like more educated way of saying what I'm trying to say right now. But I wanted to read, like, this album kind of came out at the tail end of that, and in response to that, the lead single of the album being called Black Myself, which I think is such an important song. But I wanted to read an excerpt of Soapbox. They want to hear your soapbox speech. They want to know how you would do it. They want to know how it should be, because I don't care what you think. You can keep your sophistry. Save my brain from atrophy. I have my own hand that feeds, so I don't need what you think. They want to hear your soapbox speech. Want to know how you would do it, want to know how it should be, because I don't care what you think. You know, she kind of repeats that a second time. Yeah. Which I think is like a great way of setting up the album. But Black Myself is so interesting. You know, it has like this like driving beat sound to it, immediately kind of hits you in the face. And then the immediate first lyrics are, I want to jump the fence and wash my face in the creek, but I'm black myself. I want to sweep that girl right off her feet, but I'm black myself. I'm tired of walking around with no shoes on because I'm black myself. And your precious God ain't going to bless me because I'm black myself. And then, is you washed in the chattel, or is you washed in the blood of your chattel, because the lambs rotted away. When they stopped shipping workhorses, they bred their own anyway. That's crazy. I mean, like, such heavy lyrics. And I think that this interview with Country Queer did such a great job kind of going into why this was such an important song. And she talks about why she wanted to write it. You know, growing up in Chattanooga, as we had talked about earlier, You know, she says that her hometown is kind of a mixed bag. Some of the neighbors didn't really say anything to them. There were only one of a couple of black families back then. Some of them were nice and some of them were cool with her playing with the other kids. But she says when she was about 13 or 14, all of a sudden they just didn't want to hang out with her anymore. And it took her a while to realize that it was more than just, oh, we grew apart. It was just all of a sudden, bam, is what she said in her own words. However, the family also found themselves somewhat isolated from black families because they did not attend church. When she met new people, they asked which church her family attended, and she said, quote, "If you say you don't go to church, that's a problem." You know, she said, "I'm a person of color, regardless of what my socioeconomic status was, regardless of what I did in school or how I dressed or what I listened to." And in spite of the isolation, Kiah understands why her parents chose to raise her where they did. She's, "My parents came from humble beginnings. They wanted the best for me, their kid. As far as picking the neighborhood, picking the school and all of that, I guess there were unforeseen consequences. I'm a person of color, you know, like she said, regardless of my socioeconomic status." When Kia's parents' marriage hit a rocky spot, she found herself to be emotionally distant from others and turned to music for solace. Which I think is like something that we all kind of do. Like, I know that like when my parents were splitting up, that was for me, like immediately I was like, I have to write everything. I have to write so much.
I always found mine as like finding that one song that I just listened to on repeat that makes me feel sick to my stomach. Because it just puts what you're feeling into words that I sometimes can't express at the time. I think is what it boils down to. It gives me a way to feel when I can't explain how I feel. And that's why I turn to music so often when I'm feeling something.
I feel the same way. I mean, like music is that one bridge, you know, for like every significant moment, every like really hard moment. Sometimes like music has the words that we can't just openly say, and I think that Black Myself is a great example of that. And it is so interesting that like, you know, that is the thing that I mean, of course as a musical person, that's the thing that you turn to when you're like everything starts, you know, being really rocky. I think something that's really interesting about her that like I feel so like I can relate to her by in the same interview, she talks about how she, you know, initially wanted to learn piano, but she would sneak into her parents' room to watch MTV without their permission. Like I would, you know, sneak downstairs and watch the VH1 Top 20 Video Countdown. And then inspired by the alt rock videos she watched, she wanted to pick up the guitar instead. And her first lessons came from CD-ROMs, DVDs, and videos. And then she gravitated towards reading like tabs. And anytime she heard a song, if she wasn't sure what the chords were, she would just like look it up, which is like exactly how I've learned how to play like anything I could play. Like I never took like formal lessons. I just kind of like literally ultimateguitar.com. Yeah. and I've been a loyal follower of Ultimate Guitar since like the early 2000s, just looking up every it's like, I mean, that's the beauty of like the time period that we grew up in, is that, you know, you don't, everything's available to you. She mentions that that's like something that like kind of like set her apart in the way that it was kind of a hard learning curve when she got to college. But, you know, I just think that like her unique approach to music by learning this way kind of gave her it just in general, like she has such a unique perspective growing up in Appalachia, an area that didn't have very many Black people, not going to church, so she felt isolated not just from white people but from Black people as well, and then going to college and feeling this isolation because, well, she learned guitar differently. There's always been this like difference there, and then being queer on top of it, and so there's such an interesting and necessary perspective that I think that Amythyst Kiah brings to music, and I think a lot of people in the industry see that, and that's why, like, you know, in her newest album, there's so many heavy hitters on it, like Billy Strings or, you know, Butch Walker working on the album or things like that. I think is really cool, the way that so many people kind of gravitate towards her. And I think that that's, you know, such a great thing that she was nominated for a Grammy as well, because I think that that's like super important. She deserved that, you know, like, she, like, it says in the same article that, like, you know, while she's always been such a good guitar player, it's her voice that's really set her apart. And I think that that's really apparent in this song too, because I would say that, like, not just like her singing voice, but her like perspective voice, like I said. There's so there's a color, there's a heaviness to each word. It like fills the whole space. Like, exactly where she's coming from. She's not mincing any words here. Yeah. I think that's really important.
I think there's also something very unique in her music too. Unique, I guess is the right word, because not everybody does it. But like she's really good at making the music really punch home and drive home what she's saying too. Mm-hmm. Like, I'll get more into it in the next album, in her latest album. But like the music always fits what she's saying so well, and like the tones she's using and the instruments she's using and where she decides to create space in a song, or like all of it fits this, like it's all like it's thought of. And I had written down from an interview, she was talking about her dad was like an audiophile, and so he had like CDs and records and tapes, and then he even had like an equalizer, and so like when he'd put it in, he'd go to the equalizer and make it sound just how he wanted it to. Mm-hmm. And she said that was like kind of like a starting point for her and stuff, and I feel like I can hear that in her music because she makes the music adjust and fit around just how she wants it to sound to bring home a message, or at least that's how I feel. Mm-hmm. Whether that's really what she's doing, I notice that a lot in her music, that like the music would make me stop and then pay attention to the lyrics, which is kind of backwards for me, because usually I'm listening to lyrics.
Yeah. No, I feel the same way. I actually 100%, like, now that you've put that into words, I wasn't able to really kind of pinpoint what it was. And I will say that I think that that's a bigger thing on Still and Bright for me, that like when I was going through listening to the album, it was like certain instrumentals that made me actually like pause more so than others. Going into Still and Bright, because I feel like we could transition into that. This album is from 2024, and I'm going to pull from the excerpt that's on Amythyst Kiah's website, because I feel like that would be the best way to that's the best representation of the album. But produced by Butch Walker, and recorded at his Nashville studio, Amythyst Kiah's new album explores the vast expanse of her inner world, her deep-rooted affinity for Eastern philosophies and spiritual traditions, a near mystical connection with the natural world, the life lessons learned in her formative years as a self-described anime nerd mall goth, in dreaming up the backdrop of her revelatory storytelling. Kiah and Walker arrived at a darkly cinematic and exhilarating twist on the rootsy alt-rock of her 2021 breakthrough album, Wary and Strange, an LP that landed on Rolling Stone's list of the 25 best country and Americana albums of 2021, and drew acclaim from major outlets like Pitchfork. With its sonic palette encompassing everything from fused-out guitars and industrial-leaning beats to gilded pedal steel and Kiah's exquisitely graceful banjo work, Still and Bright fully affirms her as an artist of both daring originality and uncompromising depth. I know that there are, she goes into detailing like grief and trauma. There is some talk about maybe dealing with her mother's suicide. There's some other stuff of talking about life growing up in Johnson City. I know that there's some talk of also kind of like, like the Eastern philosophies. I was going to say, like, for me, I was really geared towards the latter half of the album, which is usually not where most people feel. I feel like the first half of the album is really stacked, because there's a lot of like S.G. Goodman is on the opening track, Play God and Destroy the World, and then Billy Strings is on I Will Not Go Down. Silk and Petals has Butch Walker. Die Slowly Without Complaint has Avi Kaplan. But I will say, like, God's Under the Mountain and After was like the part of the album where I really started to like perk up, which is interesting because I feel like that's more mellow half. I feel like Dark Matter was a song that really stuck out to me. I was just kind of like interested in the lyric choices. Like the first verse says, remnants of fallen embers, the color of my love's hair, blue or gray like a cold December, are the colors her eyes will change. We embarked on the adventure. We will never be the same. We are healed by the dust of the greenest earth. Which I think is like,
Yeah.
it's such an interesting, it almost sounds like she like takes the second half of the album to go on like a, like I'm just kind of joking about this, but like, oh, we're out on an acid trip a little bit.
Yeah.
No, but like, I think that that's really cool. Like,
I wrote down Space, which I'm not sure where that falls on the list.
I think that's the second song. Yeah.
Second song? I don't know, but
Yeah.
that one caught me. And it was purely just because like literally all instruments drop out in the chorus.
Yeah.
When she's singing about space, and it makes you feel like it literally gave me that feeling of like floating in space.
Yeah.
And openness and freedom. And, you know, it goes back to that whole like, it was more the music choices that caught my attention than some of the lyrics, which is totally backwards for me usually. But it was the like that drop in the instrumentation made me go, wait, what's happening? Because I felt this sense of like freedom and space and like floating in that song.
I will say, yeah. No, I totally get what you're saying. I think that's like, it's such a cool way of telling that story. And then even like the name of the song Space, like there's space between each letter of space.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I love when the music contributes to the feeling in that way. And that is also one of those songs that like immediately I like looked up from, I think I was driving when I was listening to it. So I was like, I like looked over and I was like, huh?
Yeah.
I also feel like I Will Not Go Down with Billy Strings. Like, I know he wasn't like singing on it or anything, but Billy Strings is such a fabulous guitar player. Obviously, that's like the understatement of the year. But he adds like he's not like, I feel, and I've never felt this way about Billy Strings. So, but I feel like a lot of times really good instrumentalists can override a whole song or like overrun it, where it's like, here's this beautiful song and then there's just like crazy guitar solo. And I'm not saying that Billy Strings does that at all. Like, I feel like he's always been a very tasteful musician, and that's what I love about him being a part of this album, because he just like fills in the space.
Well, that whole song is a powerhouse. Like, musically, lyrically, I loved that. I wrote that one down too. Because like, he just adds to it. It's not like he's taking away from it, but also the song itself matches what he's is up to the level of what he's doing, so it can't overpower it, because the whole entire thing is a fucking powerhouse of a song.
Yeah, I love what he does. It's very glittery. I think that it just like, that one's a really great one. I also really liked Never Alone. Also like literally one of the last songs on the album. And this one feels like it's really experimenting with like this Eastern philosophy that's, you know, spoken about in the description for the album. Like this first verse being like, we think we're out here by ourselves with no manual on how to live. We make it up as we go along. Oh, something's got to give. This swirling sphere and darkness that we're living on, we're never alone. We can't see eye to eye. We just fight about who's wrong. The system is down. We turn it off and turn it on. This swirling sphere and darkness that we're living on, we're never alone. And then kind of like goes into this like whole like, I don't know if there's an answer. I don't think I see a sign. Think the world revolves around you. You just get left behind. But like I really did like the sound of it too. Like, I thought that the choices of it were also really good musically. But I just thought it was a very interesting, you know, just kind of like, it was just very reflective and sweet. I just thought it was really nice. So I thought this was a really great album as well. I didn't listen to it initially when it came out. But it was nice being able to like, I like listened to it a little bit later and then getting to revisit it now with a more, I don't know, just like listening more intently instead of just like, oh, the new Amythyst album that came out, let me just put it on. Like actually being like, oh, let me listen to this, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's what I love about this podcast. That's why I do it, because it forces me to like actually listen to things instead of just putting it on.
Definitely. I feel like there's such great music out there, and a lot of times I've there's stuff I've just never heard of that, like, once I finally heard of it, I'm like, I cannot believe. I mean, like, that's what I love about the fact that, like, people will suggest artists to me. I think when I was a kid, I wanted to be so different and cool and, like, find artists myself. And no, I love being able to be like, yes, this person put me onto this artist, because I would have not found them on my own. Like,
this was my first time listening to her. So, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I know normally you ask this question, but I think I shall. Was there anything that you, from listening to Amythyst Kiah, that you felt like, this is the lesson I'll take away from her body of work?
I mean, there's a few things, but mostly it just made me want to write again.
Ooh,
which is just like, it gave me, like I said, that especially that first album, like, gave me that, like, I want to sit down with my friends and write music again. Yeah. And it's been way too long.
Yeah.
And I felt like I saw a little bit of how I like to write, and like a more polished version of how I like to write in her, which inspired me. Because, like, I've always been like, I don't know where my genre falls. And I feel like there's so many wide genres now that there's so many, like, niche version of genres and genre mixing and, you know.
Yeah.
That I think I was always so worried about where I fall. And so when I do find someone that I feel like I relate to a little bit, it always feels good, you know.
Yeah. No,
But
definitely. I think that that's extremely powerful. I mean, the most inspiring music is, you know, some people will sit there and say, no, it's gotta be something, you know, it's gotta be like, I don't know, something like everybody knows. But I think that some of the most inspiring music can be the music that's like somebody with their guitar. Yeah. And that's what I love about Dig too, is it just feels so, like, I don't know, raw is like such a great word for it. Like, you totally
I wrote
get
pure. That. I wrote it felt so pure to me.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Like, it was just music. Like, there was no, it 100%. Didn't feel like it was, I mean, I know it was recorded and edited and everything, but it didn't feel like it was heavily edited. Like, it felt like sitting in your room listening to your friends write music. And as a songwriter, I couldn't have asked for anything more at this time in my life, I don't think.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I needed that. So.
Yeah. I love that. I really do. That's awesome.
Well, let's take a really quick break, and then we can come back and talk about some of our favorite songs. Yeah. And find out what you take from Amythyst Kiah. We will be right back.
Welcome to Know Your Rights, a music podcast from two guys who know just enough about songwriting to start a podcast about.
Follow Rob
and Colton
as each week we dive into a different band or songwriter and discuss what makes them great, okay,
or otherwise.
Music is law,
and we know our rights.
Streaming bi-monthly wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Know Your Rights, a Bassbone Entertainment podcast. What happens when you get a bunch of obsessive music lovers sitting around a table and talking about every aspect in music? You get the Untitled Mixtape. Join Dango, Lewis, and Lorenzo in this educational but enjoyable podcast that encourages everyone to branch out and expand what they listen to. From deep dives to letting you know what is a bop or flop, the Untitled Mixtape boys are sure to take care of your music needs every Wednesday on your favorite podcast platform. The Untitled Mixtape, a Bassbone Entertainment podcast.
And we're back. So going through, I don't even know that I have a favorite song. I just have like songs written down here that I liked. But we'll start with you. Do you have a favorite? Let's start with album. Do you have a favorite album out of the three?
Probably, you know, I always go for like, I'm just very much loyal to the album that I find people with. That just seems to be a trend I've noticed with this podcast. So Wary and Strange, I think, will probably be my favorite Amythyst Kiah album, because like that was the album that I got turned on to her by. So I think that's like, to me, that's like, when I think of her, I think of this album. So for me, I think that's the one.
I think I would say Dig, and I think it's just because of what I was exactly what I was talking about before the break, is that it like rejuvenated me to want to write music again.
Yeah.
It was that cut down, not really any like frills. Is that the word? I don't know. I'm so tired.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah. It was just cut back, acoustic, good old, like, gave you that songwriter's vibe. And as a songwriter, it rejuvenated me to want to write some music again. So I think that was my favorite album. Do you have a favorite song or songs?
I feel that's hard. I would say maybe, okay, so on Dig, it would be Over Yonder in the Graveyard.
Yeah.
Just think it's pretty, and feel like I've heard that type of song a lot from different people, but not from that perspective. So I just feel like it's such a great fresh perspective. I also feel like maybe like on Wary and Strange, maybe Wild Turkey. I like love that song a lot, but I also think Black Myself is such a great song too. So those would be like a cluster of like my favorite, I guess, Amythyst Kiah songs.
Nice. I wrote down, so I had Over Yonder written down. I also wrote down Brand New Shoes, because like that one literally made me stop and crinkle my nose, and the picking on the banjo and the acapella opening, just like I was making that like stank face the whole time, just like, oh, this is so good. Wary and Strange, I wrote down Firewater, and it's because this is one of the ones that the lyrics did catch me on this one. And it was how many spirits does it take to lift a spirit? I don't know, because I've got every spirit, and I'm still laying here crying on the floor. So can you just leave me be?
Yeah. That's so
like
good.
Just that wordplay on spirit.
Yeah.
And how like she used it 3 different ways kind of in that line. And I just like, I had to stop and rewind it and go, wait, what did she say?
Yeah.
I really, really liked that song, and I really liked that line. 'Cause like just the picture of like, they're like, oh, lift your spirits. But then like also the picture of, I have so many spirits living inside me.
Yeah.
So much of the past living inside me that I'm still laying here on the floor crying is, I don't know, that whole picture. And especially knowing that this was like 2021, whether she wrote this in 2020, I don't know when she wrote this, but
yeah, I know this was like meant to be somewhat like a breakup album too, like of her, that like she'd been working on it, like scrapped the album like 2 or 3 times, and so it was like a mixture of a couple of different things. So I just think that like everything happening around the same time. Don't get me wrong, the mixture of the pandemic and also a breakup, been there too.
Oof,
that shit sucks. I was particularly messed the fuck up that time period, so I totally get it.
And that one just caught me. And yeah, I loved Space on Still and Bright.
Yeah.
That one just stuck with me too. So I think from what I listened, I mean, there were a lot that I liked, but those were the 3 that like really stuck out to me.
Yeah.
So
I think those are great picks.
So you asked me before the break, but what about you? Like, what is the thing that you take from Amythyst?
That is a good question. It's so hard. Like, it's one of those things that's like kind of hard when like you've listened to somebody for a while and you just like, it's like not something I've asked myself. I would say I guess. What? Man, why is it so hard? I should have thought about this ahead of time. Actually, I like how I was so confident asking you and didn't think to ask myself. I guess I would say, don't be afraid to be a bit confrontational in your songwriting. I guess, or it's okay to work through things that you need to work through in your writing. It's okay to be vulnerable in that space. And to be raw. You don't have to have a bunch of fancy bells and whistles and crazy production to get your point across. You know what I mean? And I think that's just the beauty of folk in general, whether or not she classifies herself as folk or if she is in general classified as folk, whatever. I just think that what I just love is it really could be stripped down to nothing and still get its point across,
Yeah. And
so I guess that's how I feel about that.
She even talked about how Wary and Strange was her working through things.
Yeah.
I forget which article it was, but she talked about how it was her working through some of her trauma and some of the things that she's gone through in her songwriting. And I think that's so cool when you can use music as therapy.
Yeah.
And then other people can use it too.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about earlier, I turn to music and I tend to try to find a song that relates to how I feel.
Yeah.
And then just play that song on repeat and let it, hurt me over and over and over again.
Yeah, definitely.
I know, Gravity by Sarah Bareilles was that for a while.
Oof,
for me.
That's a good one too. That's a good one.
But I think when you're so willing to be open and honest in your songwriting and your music, then other people can relate and find their space in that too. And I think that's so cool.
Yeah. I think it's a very generous thing to do as a writer. To be vulnerable in a public space and know that your vulnerability is going to open up discourse, but no, it's also going to open up healing for people.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very generous thing to do as an artist in general, to give people a platform to heal or to discuss things or open up a dialogue, or whatever the case may be,
Yeah. So, well, thank you for bringing her up as a person to listen to, because I really, really enjoyed my time.
Of course. I'm
her.
glad you liked her.
And I'm definitely gonna put some songs on my playlists to listen to again. If you haven't listened to Amythyst Kiah, please, please, please go do so.
Yes.
You won't regret it.
Mm-hmm.
I promise. So our next artist, we are taking on a big undertaking.
I'm honestly regretting a little bit because there's so much work to be done. Whoa, dude. Whoa.
We decided
4
to
episodes
do
on its own.
We speaking of Dollywood, we decided to do Dolly Parton.
Yes.
And I should get started on that tonight, probably.
Literally, there's a lot of music to be listened to. Holy cow.
We're gonna probably have to either split it into 2 or just narrow down what we want to talk about.
I think you might be right. I think it might not be I'm not gonna give you guys a backstory on her life. You guys already know. We're just talking about the music.
There is oh my god. We'll do quick Reader's Digest version or something.
Dude.
Cuz she is the queen for a reason.
Mhm.
She is
my
in
fellow
Dolly
Capricorn.
we trust. Yeah, in Dolly we trust for a reason.
Mhm.
So that is who we'll be discussing next month. join in with us as we discuss all things Dolly Parton.
Yeah.
Maybe we can even find a guest. I'll have to see. Maybe.
Ooh.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Bring in a friend.
Yeah.
Phone a friend to help us with this. All right. We will see you guys next month. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
And
Woo, woo,
we
woo,
will
woo.
talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.
If you're looking for fun events, awesome music, and enjoyable podcasts, then look no further. The Basebone Entertainment family has you covered. With so many talented people in our community, it was only right that we not only bring you events, but all sorts of awesome entertainment. Follow Basebone on social media or join our Discord community to stay updated and engaged in everything. That is at Baseblown on social media and discord.gg/Baseblown for our Discord. Basebone Entertainment, bringing you more than just bass in your face.